And now the After Movie Diner, which this week is all about colonics! What follows, get it? Well, you will when you hear the episode. What Follows is a recording that was made back when It Follows was still in the theatres in New York City. Some of these episodes were recorded while the show was on hiatus, and we present them to you now for your listening pleasure. Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the After Movie Diner. And here we are in Gracie's on 2nd, which used to be the Viand coffee shop and is now Gracie's on 2nd. It's the corner of 86th and 2nd Ave, obviously.
Yes.
Gracie's on 2nd. And we have just been to see, well, what movie have we been to see?
We went to see a film called It Follows
Yeah.
at my local cinema, because my local cinema doesn't show, actually it does show every now and then, like a weird little movie, and you wanted to see it, and I saw the poster.
All three of the movies that are, I mean, Run All Night is a big release, but like the Pacino one is a fairly low-key release as well.
Yeah, okay.
And all the trailers before it were all for art house stuff.
Yeah.
None of the trailers before it were. So it seems like since that one disappeared, the AMC is doing all the blockbusters, and this one, the City Cinema, has become
so it's
more
nice
of
to see like a
kind
little
of neighborhoody, indie kind of cinema. Which was, I appreciate. The trouble is, as we learned from all the trailers before it.
Once again, cast iron rule. If the trailers before the movie suck, and they all suck.
But they sucked because they were all achingly indie. It was like
that one with
much more indie
with Nick Kroll and Rose effing Byrne was like exactly the same as that one with Jason Bateman that was out. Like a year ago.
Where you watch it and you go, who read the script and thought this was an idea?
This guy.
Upper middle class, rich white guys
this guy
have
used to have it
problems
all,
too.
but now he's having problems, and he has to go home to deal with his crazy family. And even though they're all played by comedians, there aren't going to be many laughs.
One of them.
Cut to.
Wait a minute.
Even the inspirational indie song at the end where they decide they're going to make it.
Plus a baby.
Oh, God. Why do people keep putting Rose Byrne in films?
Oh, I know what I'm going to have.
Oh, what are you going to have?
I'm going to have my fettuccine alfredo with chicken and bacon.
Oh, blinding. Well, mine comes with fries, so you can have some fries. What did you have?
Not that hungry.
I'm get something like. Well, I'm going to get fries.
Because I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. Welcome back to the After Movie Diner, and of course, joining us in the diner as always when we're on location. It's my cohort, James Wallace.
Thank you very much.
This is the second. This is the second time in a row that we've been to see a movie where we've both come out of it and been like, because really, if I was happy to put out just a 5-minute podcast, it would be the discussion we've just had about nothing, followed by the sound of us both going, and then the show would end. But I'm not going to do that.
No, because he's a professional. Ladies and gentlemen, he's a professional.
No, I'm not really. But
you are.
First of all, let's decide what we want to eat.
Well, I'm going to have the Balboa.
What is the Balboa? Tell everybody.
The Balboa is hot roast beef on a garlic roll covered in melted Swiss cheese with fries.
My Christ, that sounds good.
Yes, that's what I thought.
And that sounds desirable to say the least. Where is that?
Down here.
The Balboa. I like that it's named after Rocky as well.
Me too.
Although wrong town. Philly is the...
Yeah.
My God, that sounds good.
It does sound really good. That's what I'm going to have one.
Yeah, let's have 2 Balboas.
This is like we're also in the world's quietest diner.
Let's. What are they screening on TV? Is this like the History Channel? This is like Bible Part 2, isn't it?
Maybe it's the Bible Returns.
The Bible Returns. This time it's pissed off.
This time it's personal.
This time it's Bible 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
I think 2 Balboas sounds amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Let's have that.
Hello. How are you?
Hey. Good. Thank you. Yeah. We're gonna get 2 Balboas.
Okay. So 2 Balboas. Something to drink?
Water's good for me.
I'm going to stick with water for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
So, we've been to see It Follows, which has been something of a...
Marmite?
No, it's been a love it or hate it kind of movie. It's been a sort of divisive thing.
I can see why.
I can totally see why. One of the reasons is it's utterly awful.
Yes. From start to finish.
And the other reason is, to be fair to it, because I'm not... when I came out of the cinema, and while I was watching the film, to be fair, I could... Jim, much like Pacific Rim, if anyone's heard our Pacific Rim podcast, Jim started to bristle, meaning like get agitated and huff and generally say this is the worst thing I've ever seen, about 7 minutes into the movie when we were watching Pacific Rim. I then had to sit there for 2 hours while Jim expressed annoyance and sighing and everything and whatever, which is I personally find it a bit of a hilarious joy. But I'm sure other people will find it annoying, but I find it a particular treat. It kind of, whatever. And with this one, sure enough, about 5 to 10 minutes in, the bristling started. And if John is listening to this, I'm sure he'll be happy to know it never stopped. And I expected that when we got into the diner and I started to record, Jim was going to go, and listen here, Crossy, here's something, and here's the reason why it's a big part of Shash, which I'm going to let him do, dear listener, in a minute. But I did want to say, there were moments where... And it was pretty difficult in the cinema where we were, because there was my ghost of future, the ghost of Christmas future, sat opposite me with an enormous gut, a beard, and was open-mouth coughing in quite possibly the most repellent way.
Oh, I didn't realise he was doing open mouth.
Well, he never covered his mouth. That's why you could hear it. That's why all you heard was like this... like you heard it.
I did want to lean over and go, do you need a glass of water, mate? And then I saw that he had like the biggest tub of...
thing, right. He was sucking on a big gulp or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
He was sucking on one of them. He had this enormous guy. He was wearing
did
an
shut
old
up, though.
T-shirt.
That was what was weird. Is that it was constant for the first 10 minutes, and then he stopped.
Except that around about the, I'm guessing what felt like the 4.5 hour mark, even though it was only an hour and a half movie, it felt interminably long.
Yes.
But around about the 4 hour mark, he did just start going, this is the worst thing.
Well, he did as well.
The worst thing, yeah.
I don't think anybody, but I got the impression that from everyone around us, they thought it was crap.
Yeah. So, well, everyone was like getting up and going to the bathroom. A bag lady came in halfway there.
Even the bag lady left.
The bag lady
God knows
came
what she
in.
had to go to like sneak into the cinema and get a bit of peace.
She snuck
it was so
in.
bad, she didn't even
She sat down. She said to Coughing Man, my ghost of Christmas future.
Yeah.
She said to him, like, what movie is this or whatever? And he was like, oh, this is It Follows. And we thought she wanted to go see something else, but she sat down anyway.
She started arranging the bags.
She started arranging her bags, and what was really sweet was that a scary sequence, what was meant to be a scary sequence, happened shortly after she sat down, and she had let out a wonderful old lady like, "Ooh!" Anyway, it was quite what I was setting up to say is it was quite difficult to kind of engage with the movie because it was very bright. It's a very small cinema. The screen was very bright, so it like illuminated the whole cinema. So there was no like darkness. You couldn't get any atmosphere. And then we were surrounded by like rustling people in front. Jim with a box of Whoppers. I was doing my own rustling, to be fair, quite a drastic amount of rustling. There was bag lady, there was open mouth coughing. The whole thing was going on. So it was very difficult to kind of engage in the movie. So there was a bit at the beginning where I was like, I'm not able to engage with this, and that's frustrating me. It wasn't frustrating me like what the movie was doing. It was frustrating with me that I wasn't giving it a chance.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And there was that moment where I leaned over and I was like, man, just like try and get into it and relax. And you're like, no, it's done. Like, I can't even imagine the pain you suffered sitting through it, because it lost me quite dramatically at a certain point in the movie.
I'd be interested to know what that was.
But I think it was round about when she slept with the Johnny Depp wannabe.
Oh, I came back from that. That's right, because you're right.
I think it quite staggeringly lost me at that point. But and not because she did that, because that kind of, I was like, well, they've got to do something in order to like further the plot. So fair enough. But like, all the sequences after that, because there's a whole range of sequences where he couldn't see what was going on and blah, 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 and it just went on and on and on, that I was just like, oh, this is just never going to end. So it kind of lost me. But I did try and engage with it. So before, like, Jim went off on his rant, or while Jim goes off on his rant, or indeed as a counterpoint to it, at some point I do want to talk about just a few things that I thought were effective. But you wanted me to summarize the plot, right?
Yeah, because every time I try and summarize the plot, it takes too long. The plot, what I'm trying to say, is never clear, and I usually go off on wild tangents.
The plot, as far as I can figure it, is that it's somewhere in the 20th century in which a lot of, like, retro stuff has gone past being cool and retro and just gone to being annoying and twatty. Let's call it Hipsterville, USA.
Yeah.
It's filmed in Detroit, but in, like, the middle class area of Detroit. Although their cameras do linger on the.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Great.
Lovely. No, that'll be the lot. Thanks very much.
Oh, yeah, could I get a side of brown gravy?
Okay.
Thank you. Because I know how my listeners love that I always have a side of brown gravy. In fact, someone left a voicemail recently that said...
Oh, yeah?
Said, why?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know.
That said, with a side of brown gravy, of course. Because they've often heard that I've said that a lot.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's set in the post-apocalyptic hipster wasteland of Detroit in circa 1975.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Circa 1975, into which we see a girl run about in her nightie, get in a car, drive to a beach, and then get found the next morning with her legs snapped backwards in a sort of gory, horrible way. This is important because it's the only time up until the maybe second to last sort of big sequence in the movie that we see the results of what this creature or whatever it is does to people, right? So we're aware that it's a threat, we're just not aware, like, really what the threat is in any great shakes, other than obviously it ends in death.
This is the greatest sandwich I've ever eaten.
Good. So, and I will eat it in a minute when you go off on your rant. So she's dead. Then we join another family who's sort of the people we're going to be following, if you like. And this girl, she's going on a date with her boyfriend to the cinema. He sees a girl in the yellow dress. He suddenly realizes, wait a minute, that girl in the yellow dress isn't there. He runs out. He takes her to a car park. They have sex. And then he chloroforms her, straps her to a chair, and explains, I've just passed on to you the curse of It Follows, which is that someone who, a creature that can be anybody, it can be a stranger in the crowd, or it can be someone you know or someone you love, will follow you now that you've had sex with me. I've passed it on to you, and it's going to follow you and follow you and follow you until you have sex with someone else and pass it on to them. Right? Sure enough, naked woman turns up at the warehouse where he strapped her to a chair, and sure enough, she starts to follow. The only caveat to this is that she is the follower, the beast, or whatever it is, can only walk. It only walks. That's all it does. So its handicap is that it walks. And then the rest of the movie we spend with this blonde girl as she gets menaced by the thing that's following her, and all her friends in a variety of different set pieces try and help. The film is shot in an incredibly slow-paced, Halloween-influenced by the bucket load type way, a lot like I had to watch a movie called Gummo by Harmony Korine for another podcast, and I'm not a fan of Harmony Korine at all, but very similar, not quite as grotesque, and obviously not that there wasn't quite as much sort of swearing or weirdness going on in it, but it was filmed in just a very sort of grubby Detroit in the 70s type way. I mean, that's really the only way to describe it. Over which was put any single possible horror-style soundtrack imaginable. This had shining deep booms, it had Evil Dead blinkety 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 sounds, it had Halloween-style synthesizers. Romero stuff. It had everything but the kitchen sink, and in fact, I'm surprised at one point there wasn't someone literally banging the kitchen sink, because they might as fucking well be.
They'll probably be in the director's cut.
Right. So, that's it really. I'll talk about what I thought in a minute, but I want to eat some of this delicious sandwich. And James, why don't you rant at us for a little bit?
First of all, it didn't make me as angry as Pacific Rim.
Right.
Because Pacific Rim made me so angry because it could have been really, really good. And it had really good people in it. And, like, obviously the man can direct. And there was lots about it that I really wanted to like. But it was so ham-fisted. Well, we don't have to go into why I hate Pacific Rim again. But my point is that my reason I was so angry is because it could have been good. If you'd introduced me to the director of this movie, you know, like, if there had been like a director's Q&A before, I would have known, like, straight away, oh, okay, it's going to be this kind of a film. And just like I knew, I mean, I had that horrible feeling because even though I never wanted it to be true, every time, thank you very much. Cheers, thank you. Every time the trailers suck before a movie, the movie sucks. But anyway, so the first thought I had after about 5 minutes is, my wife and I, we do this thing on Friday nights where we order pizza and we watch horror films on Netflix. And neither of us has like a great... You don't have to have a lot of patience on Netflix. So you can give things 5-10 minutes, and then you go, okay, it's going to be this kind of film. And if it, it either grabs you or it doesn't,
Right.
And we're not like mean or like we have like tiny attention spans. We'll go, let's give it another 5 minutes.
But you want to watch a decent movie, it's a Friday night. Right.
So there was a point in this movie after about 5 minutes where I knew that I would have turned to my wife and said, I'm not really enjoying this. And she'd have gone, no, me neither, and we'd have stopped. And it would have been consigned to the dustbin of like many Netflix horror movies that just don't grab you. And the reason it didn't grab me is that I wouldn't have known unless I had to sit through the whole terrible, terrible thing, was that it was so unbelievably shallow. And there's nothing wrong with a shallow horror movie if the things it's expressing.
No, but shallow with the pretentious.
But that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. Is that if it was shallow, like hack and slash, boobs, gore, whatever, and it's like, yeah, we'll just give them that. We'll give them the shallow crap. Underneath that would still be like whatever dark, weird things are like feeding in the director and the right. Even though they're trying to do something like crap and shallow, there's still something going on because like they are, they're talking about things that like titillate them and excite them, and in some ways that can be quite revealing in a way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm not saying these films have hidden depths, but at least there's an honesty to it. Do you know what I mean? They're saying, well, this is what I find. This is what I find titillating. Whereas it was like, I said to Crossy, I can't remember if it's during it or not, but we also used to go to a lot of short film nights in Brixton in London. No, not Brixton. On the Edgware Road, off the Edgware Road. Remember, it's like the Macbeth short film night. Some of the short films are great, but a huge preponderance of them were like unbelievably pretentious rubbish, where you could tell that the person making them thought they were being so deep and so clever, but it was so obvious what they were saying. Like they thought they were like covering it up and like, oh, we'll do this, but really it means that, But when it's so obvious to you, the pretentious thing that they're saying, it ceases to become interesting. And if the pretentious thing they're saying is, we all die, yeah? That's not interesting. Like, that's something that everybody knows. Like, we all know we die, right? It's
almost like the opposite of interesting.
Yeah, I figured out about after she gets strapped to the chair and the woman starts walking towards him and he's explaining, oh yeah, I had sex. And that's the only way I had sex with you, so I passed it on to you. I thought, oh, it's mortality, it's fear of death. They're growing up, while growing up, they get this fear of death, and the only way to get rid of it is to keep fucking. That's what they're trying to say with the thing. One of the reasons I knew is that first woman that came walking towards it was like a middle-aged version of her, basically. Oh, look, I'm your own mortality. And then the next woman she sees is like an old woman coming. Oh, look, I'm your mortality coming for you. Right. And the thing is, right, is that that's all fine, okay? But what you needed was like a Roger Corman to come in and go, right, great, but can we do away with the slow walking people, and can we turn it into like a big monster? And let's throw a couple of car chases in there. Like,
except I have a counterbalance to that.
Okay.
The thing I was thinking the whole way through, that I also think fed into it, especially once I saw the opening shot, which is stolen straight out of Halloween. I mean, if the opening shot had Haddonfield written over the top of it, you would have thought it's Halloween, right? Because it had autumnal leaves and blah, 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 blah. And it was a very kind of Halloween-y type street, which is meant to be set in Illinois. This is set in Michigan, but it's the same area of the country kind of thing, but just that kind of desolate, kind of small-town America. Anyway, what is it that Michael Myers does? He just walks very, very slowly, right? And is going to get you, but he walks very, very slowly, right? And what is it, or who is it that gets killed, or what is it that gets leveled at Halloween all the time? Is that it's a Republican's wet dream, because it's all about if you are young and you have sex, or if you take drugs, or if you drink, you die.
Right, it's like a morality thing,
right?
Kind of thing.
Which isn't why Carpenter made it at all. He just made it because you want to have sex and death in a horror movie.
Right. Yeah, that's my point.
But
sorry,
it felt like to me, and we were on roughly the same page. It's just I came at it from a filmic point of view, and you came at it from a more literary or more philosophical point of view. Is that what he was doing? Was he was basically doing a Harmony Korine hipster remake of Halloween. In other words, instead of it just being Michael Myers following them, it's someone else who just walks very, very slowly, but always ends up there eventually, and is going to kill you because you had sex.
The film was made by someone who is A, catastrophically pleased with themselves, and B, the things all the way through the movie that were like, dude, you need to grow up, because these are the kind of things that I was writing when I was 19 and I knew fucking nothing about anything. All of the I'm going to put my just they go to a cinema, and what do they watch? Charade. Charade is a great movie, but it's Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, and it has absolutely fuck all to do with anything that happens in the movie. Like, literally nothing. It's not like a John Carpenter ho ho ho, it's a silly film, or it's not like let's have a joke at the actor.
But they were watching 50s sci-fi movies on the TV, and during
like
Halloween during Halloween there's a 50s during Halloween it's the thing from the other world, weirdly enough.
No, but all those movies from the 80s, all the kids watch. And the thing is, right,
retro movies.
The reason that's quite affecting in those movies, like in Fright Night or whatever, for example. The reason that's quite affecting is you can imagine these teenagers in their little rooms, in their little worlds, and there's these like crazy, and they're it's still scary for them,
Right.
But this didn't have any of that, because it was so obviously, because if she hadn't been reading that crappy little Kindle automatic book thing,
right,
the whole thing you would think would be set in the 70s. All the cars were 70s, all the TVs were like big and clunky, and it's like, if you go to this guy's apartment, dollars to donuts, he typed this up on a typewriter, his screenplay, do you know what I mean? That he wears a hat that he found in a thrift store for $1, and like...
I think it was written by the guy who Ben Stiller is playing in the new
Yes, I was just thinking,
movie.
Before they was like, oh look, they filled their apartment with old VHS tapes. How delightfully quirky. It was all that kind of shit. There's no reason for it. It doesn't make any sense other than he thinks it's neat. And the whole film was like that. It was like, I've got this really pretentious concept that's just paper thin, unbelievably shallow thinking. And I've just populated with things I think are neat, for no reason. Even his own conceit went off the rails after like half an hour. It was like, well, I can't keep having an old woman chase them. Well, it could be kind of neat if it just kind of changed, right, to different people. That would be kind of cool, yeah. Does it mean anything? No, it doesn't mean anything, but it looks cool. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I'm going to go and buy another hat.
It both had me and lost me during that first sequence in the house where the nerdy kid from the neighbourhood, who's seemingly around all the time anyway, so I don't know why it was such a big deal that he was suddenly staying over, because seemingly this kid lived without parental guidance or any kind of... Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's totally, utterly fucking irrelevant. Anyway, the nerdy kid who's always had a crush on the hot blonde, who's always going out with everyone else but him, and they were each other's first kiss, he's staying up again watching, hipster retro black and white 50s movies again for no reason, absolutely no reason at all. And they hear a smash from the kitchen and the window's been broken and he runs off upstairs. And it was the build up to that sequence was, if you could have got into that movie at that moment, you could have shut everything else out and just sort of tried to be in the moment like I did. It was quite affecting.
Up until...
Do you know when it lost me?
Her, right?
The girl.
To the girl, yeah.
Because when I looked at it, I was like, oh, okay. He's watched The Shining, right? So he wants like a kind of grotesque girl as if she's just got out of the bathtub look, with like a weird face and everything. But I know, let's make it edgy, yeah? Let's have her urinate.
You know why?
Why?
Although, it was another
and it lost
age, death. It was an incontinence thing. These are the things you have to look forward to as you get old. She was ugly, like her teeth were all fucked up.
But she wasn't old, she was a young girl.
No, she wasn't. But that's the point. Her face was twisted up by her.
Right.
She had like old teeth and an old mouth, and she was like incontinent, and that's what they was trying to say. But you're right, that was it. Because actually, I thought the same thing. I thought the movie might start to like get me back at that point because it was quite an affecting sequence. Even though the kid went upstairs and that was stupid. Like, she was going around the corner, and there was such an amazing opportunity for a really cool shot where she walked across like a dark like corridor
the sequence in Halloween when Jamie Lee Curtis is up the top of the stairs and you just see the very hint of Michael's mask in the room behind her.
Right, that could have been really good.
I thought that too.
She turns, looks at the camera, and an expression of horror comes over her face. So already...
Yeah, unless you show me something genuinely horrific.
But that suspense has been building up to that point. Is there for like either a slow, oh Jesus thing, or a slam bam, oh shit.
Right.
But instead it's like, oh, there's going to be something horrifying, is it? I wonder what that'll be. Like it's like a signpost to the horror thing. And then it was just, she wasn't that far away, like the girl. So this is this thing that you've created that, for God's sake, don't let it get close to you. And then it's in the same room, and it just stands there for a bit, like looking a bit horrible and having a wee. And then she goes, yeah, and runs away. And you go, that's it? That's what you've got to be worried. It was so disappointing.
And not only that, but they did the thing like in Fallen, where they go to a cabin, right?
Right.
And they're up in the cabin, and then there was this really weird bit where it turns out that the spooky thing that only she can see can corporally interact with other people in a sort of laughable CGI sequence where her hair is all on end and then the kid tries to hit it with a chair and then the kid is like flung off screen by magic, which just looked
and claws.
Awful.
Magic and claws.
Right. And then like nothing was ever commented on, and fucking hipster Johnny Depp was skulking around in a stonewashed denim jacket, which no one wears, because I don't even know where you would buy one in 2015. The whole thing was just completely random.
Complete balls from start to finish.
There was other balls. What was the whole sequence of her and the boat? Did she sleep with those three guys on the boat?
Yeah, that was supposed to be. So
if I sleep with them, they're on a boat.
No, she has sex, right, with the Johnny Depp guy. That's supposed to be her first time, even though it's not even the first time, because they undercut that later on. Oh, I slept with him.
It's not her first time. Her first time would have been with the original guy, Hugh, but even that wasn't her first time.
Exactly, that's the point.
That was their first time.
It was all over the fucking place, yeah, agreed. But the idea being, now she's got a fear of death, right? And the movie's saying, well, that's what happens when you get a fear of death. You just start fucking, you just start fucking. You make unwise choices because you just have to fuck because you're afraid of death. So it's supposed to be, she goes out onto that boat and is like violated by 3 blokes. That's what's supposed to happen.
Well, all you see here is her pulling up at her house with a slight tear rolling down it.
Yeah, but that's what happened.
And you're left to hypothesise that that's what happened,
Yeah,
even though...
I think it's supposed to be like, oh, how do women end up in, porn films or whatever? Like, how do they end up? How do they let themselves be treated like that? That's that comic. It's taking the whole, if you're going to have sex because you're afraid of death, go hog wild. That's what it's supposed to be.
I mean, the problem with it was that it was an art house horror movie, and the two don't go together. I mean, Kubrick tried it with The Shining, but because there's some genuinely effective, scary, nightmarish sequences in The Shining that we'd never seen before, he sort of gets away with it. But even The Shining is absolutely chock-a-block with pretentious drivel. And even more so now that people have been able to analyse every single moment.
Well, I still like The Shining, but only...
No, I like The Shining too, but what I'm saying is...
I can avoid the pretentious drivel. I can enjoy it on a...
Right. But what I'm saying is... This guy thought he was making the Shining version of Halloween. Like the Kubrick version of Halloween. That's what he thought he was making.
Like I said, catastrophically pleased with this.
Right. Because I tell you what it is... And this is the main problem, is that John Carpenter and Stanley Kubrick are two of the greatest technicians of cinema, certainly in terms of The Shining and Halloween, of horror cinema, that there has ever been and probably will ever be. And that's not exaggeration.
No.
They are absolute masters. They belong in the same sentence as Hitchcock or whoever, They're right in there. So for your first movie, or maybe it's not his first movie, but certainly it's a sophomore effort or maybe a whatever, I have no idea, but he has 3 names, so it makes me want to punch him. But for whatever movie it was, it felt like a first movie to me. To go, well, I'm going to do Carpenter and Kubrick, yeah? I'm going to make like a kind of hipster, slow, Shining-esque version of Halloween, but really it's all about mortality, yeah? Because what is horror really about? Horror is about sex and death. Because I did a film course once at the University of Wank in Wankerton, Wankathon.
In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he did a course called Sex and Death in 70s Horror.
Yeah, certainly. Or he read
Why should we... Also...
Or he read a book.
How do you hire somebody to do nothing except read The Wasteland and then hire someone who gave... I'm pretty sure that was the worst reading of The Wasteland. It's like, it's an incredible poem. Like, it's a beautiful poem. It's impossible to do it in a shit way. And it was appalling. Like,
but you know what that
really
sequence was, don't you?
Terrible reading. Gone.
That's that sequence in Halloween where she sat there and they're talking, I forget which Shakespeare thing or whatever the teacher's going on about, but she looks out of the window and she sees Michael's car. She sees the hospital car out in front of the schoolyard, and then when she looks again, the car is gone. And she's momentarily distracted looking out a window like you used to be in classrooms, and she sees the car which is going to be following her for the next 20 minutes of the movie, right? And what happened in this sequence? There she is. The class that's being taught has. See,
I don't know Halloween as well as you, so I missed a lot of this.
So the class.
I just got to hate it from a kind of a pure place. You know what I mean?
Right, I got to hate it because I was like, oh great, so now he's doing the sequence on Halloween. So, but he made it more on the nose and less.
You're right. It's like that guy out of the guy played by Adam Driver in the movie, made a movie.
Right.
It was so.
By the way, I hate Adam Driver. Just to look at him. Just to look at him, I want to take a skillet to his face. I'm Ben Stiller right now, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
And the thing was, right, guys, is I was watching the movie and there was some, like the bit where the beastie turned from the urinating woman into like the giant man.
That was
and,
kind
like,
of effective.
Stepped into the bedroom. I thought that was genuinely effective. There were some bits in it that I thought, this is nicely. I appreciated that it was tension and not jump scares. I appreciated that it was all in the soundtrack and in the camera movements and not so much in and not so much in sort of effects or anything like that. There were certain things that I really appreciated about it, but they were the things that I appreciate already in Halloween. It's not that they were like new things or
I've no doubt
I hadn't seen.
But because of
but my biggest problem with it was because I didn't realise, like you realised the whole mortality thing. I thought he was just doing, well, horror movies have to have sex and death in it, so I'm going to put sex and death in my movie. Which is also what he was doing.
Yeah.
The fact that he literally tagged on, he had the Velma from the Scooby Gang read out some mortality message.
Oh my god, that was so
when
weak.
she was in the hospital having been shot in the leg. By the way, she gets shot in the leg and doesn't react in any way at all except to sit there and hold the wound. Pretty sure anyone else would have been like screaming the fucking place.
But none of it was real. Like he made a choice really early on in the movie. Like things didn't need to follow one another.
People didn't need to react to things.
It didn't need to make sense.
No one had to have
He didn't
any
have to
emotion.
explain. He didn't have to explain why everybody had really old-looking televisions, but she's able to like read a Kindle on
Right.
a shell, which, by the way, is so precious it's annoying. Who the fuck was to read a book on a tiny shell? You'd be doing that the whole fucking time. It'd make your eyes hurt.
Right.
Also, I'm reading The Idiot. Anybody who has a teenage character in their film reading Dostoevsky needs to rethink the whole film, top to bottom.
Right.
Top to bottom. You need to rethink. They'd have to think. I'm a wanker.
There's basically a sequence in this movie where she comes in from the pool. The nerdy kid is watching retro 50s sci-fi. Right. And
reading The Idiot?
the other nerdy kid with the big glasses, Velma, I'm going to call her, from the Scooby Gang. Because we didn't get to know any of these people or care about them in any way at all.
Right.
Other than she had an alcoholic mother, which, by the way, was only put in the movie so that the mother never had to actually interact or care or whatever. Even when she calls the police after having been strapped to a chair and chloroformed, there's no, like, reality to it. The police are not really the police. They just go, oh, okay, was the sex consensual? Yeah. And had you ever seen the old woman before? No. All right, then. Bye. Right?
Yeah.
Also, how many sequences in this film is she asleep in a bed and the beast never shows up, never kills her, nothing
I told you,
ever
there's
happens?
no logic to it. That's what I
Right.
mean. Like, and that's what I realised. As soon as that...
Then when he says that, don't worry, they can only walk, they can't drive, right? They can't run, they can't drive, they can't fly, they can't whatever. So drive and buy yourself some time. Right? They drove for what I presumed was ages to get to a cabin, right? I mean, I don't know Michigan very well, but I presume it's some ways away to get from Detroit to wherever they were, right? And then we're meant to believe that what, in a day, in half a day, what? That the thing has walked from urban Detroit all the way to the...
Well, last. That was the other thing. Like, let's go to the cabin. Oh, right, okay, we're going to go to the cabin now. And they just sit on the beach. And they go, should we go for a swim? And the thing turns up, they go, should we go for a swim? Oh, no, let's not go for a swim.
Oh, the dialogue was awful.
Also, yeah, but like, why would you? Like, what's your plan? You're going to go to the cabin and discuss swimming? Is that your fucking? And what was the water metaphor? I'm assuming birth, I guess. It was so that thing where after the reason she has the orgy on the boat, right, is when she comes back. Oh, the swimming pool's all empty and broken. The swimming pool of her childhood is empty and broken. The womb, a snatch, maybe.
Oh, is that what that was?
Maybe.
See, I didn't read any of this. You see, I never watched... I just thought he was doing Halloween. Like, I was just watching it.
No,
like...
he is, but the point is that he's doing Halloween. Okay. When you're a film student...
No, I tell you what he's doing. He's doing Halloween going, I get Halloween.
That's what I'm saying. When you're a film student and you get stoned and you watch a movie, right, for the first time you go, oh my god, Night of the Living Dead's about, like, Vietnam, man, or whatever, and you're so pleased with yourself, and it's a genuinely nice thing. Don't get me wrong; it's not a bad thing. But anybody that and it's okay to mistake that for wisdom. It's okay to want to make a film about it and throw in your favourite Audrey Hepburn movie and your favourite T.S. Eliot poem and all that. That's what I did when I was 19. When I write a movie, I threw in all that stuff. It wasn't a horror movie. It was, however, shit. Just like this film was shit. And nobody gave me any money to make the movie. And the reason they didn't give me any money to make the movie is it was shit. And I'm really glad they did. And the problem is not with this guy, who's an idiot, but that's fine. He's in his early 20s and he wears silly hats and he thinks typewriters are interesting. He's allowed to be an idiot. He's of that age. That's fine. But don't give them any money. Don't give him money. Indulge his because he's going to think that's what wisdom. He's never going to grow up. He's going to be making the same film. I mean, his only hope is that people go, yeah, all right, Dave. Here's we need you to direct our movie because he's obviously got an eye. Like the guy can direct.
Yeah, there was some good sequences.
He had the sound was really good.
But I never cared about anyone, so I never felt the peril.
But that's my point.
I never felt the peril.
But the sound was really good. It looked really good. The music, even if it was a rip-off, was effective. Like how a lot of the scares were brought. Yeah. Everything about just purely directorial, right? If it's only about how it looks and how it sounds, like that's it, was good. Right? No question. I mean, the pacing was all over the fucking shop because it didn't have any, and he didn't know what to do because it was a short film because he created a monster that, like you say, it's like you drive away and then you wait for it to show up because that's all there is. So
and they did that. How many times did they get in a car?
I know.
50 times. Okay, so the repetitiveness drove me nuts. The other thing, this was the bit, right?
Right.
So they've been to the cabin, driven away. That hasn't worked. Right. They then track down Hugh, whose real name is Jeff, which gave me no end of pleasure. And they have
what about the porno mouse with the scrunched up tissues all around the bed?
Right.
Oh, that's...
So wait a minute.
His adolescence, just before he reaches adulthood.
He rented a room in a house, right, in another name, and what he did was sleep on a dirty mattress and wank off to fake porn mags.
Yeah.
But what has that got to do with anything?
It's supposed to be your adolescence that you're leaving behind. Loneliness, porn mags, scrunched up tissues. That's what he left behind.
Right. So... I don't know, anyway, it was all bollocks.
It was all bollocks. It was all two-dimensional, shallow bollocks.
So anyway, then, how did she end up in hospital again?
Bored.
How did she end up in hospital again?
She crashed the car.
That was escaping the cabin, though.
Yeah, when she escaped the cabin.
Oh, right, sorry, they went to see Jeff before the cabin. Then they go up to the cabin because of what Jeff said. Right. Then they go off. Then she drives off.
They meet Jeff, and then there's no sequence of, "Oi, you fucking prick!
Right.
You shagged me and then buggered off and left me with this."
No, he just goes, "Oh, it happened to me too."
So they go, "Oh, do you want to come in?" And then cut to them sitting around in a circle
in the garden.
Yeah. No, there was no drama.
There was no characters. Because you're right.
There wasn't even any disagreement. Nobody even went, "Should we do something else?"
Because you're right. The whole thing was written as a metaphor.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And rather than something like Halloween, which was written, Halloween was purely written, like the whole idea behind the Halloween, right, was babysitters to be killed by the boogeyman. That's the whole idea behind Halloween. The fact that Carpenter turns it into a movie you can read any number of fucking ways, right? Even though when he himself admits that all he was doing was making like the best horror movie he could make. He wasn't doing it to be like, oh, clever. He was just making the best horror movie he could make. It just happens to be one of the top 5 horror movies that has ever been made, hands down, ever in the history of cinema. People can read into Halloween any number of things.
Right.
It's a white-faced killer, so like, what do we put on that mask? You can put on whatever you want onto that mask. You can imagine any kind of killer. You can imagine it symbolizing anything you want. You can read into it the Republican nightmare of if your kids have sex when they're left alone, that they're going to end up dead and blah, 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 blah. You can read into that. But I would argue that, what do they call them over here? Public PSAs. were probably already doing that long before Halloween came around. So, but anyway.
Listen,
what was I going? No, I was going to say. Hang on. So she crashes a car, right?
Right.
In the cornfield.
Right.
She wakes up again in the hospital.
Yeah. Once again, no peril.
No peril. The beast is wherever.
Fortunately, the ambulance was able to get there in time.
Right.
Before somebody walked 200 yards to get her.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that all disappeared. Where it goes, by the way, when they're all being picked up in ambulance, whatever, never explained. So, she's in the hospital. She looks over at stonewashed Johnny Depp, goes, all right. There's then a long, awkward sex scene where he has sex with her, right? So that he can then help her out as the whatever, so that he can see the bad guy too and like help her out. But that never transpires, and what ends up happening is they end up going home, and for 3 days or 4 days or something, nobody sees anything. She holds up in her room and doesn't see anything, and he doesn't see anything, right? And there is this director's attempt at a montage, right, where you see different shots of like suburban Detroit with like leafy trees and suburb houses and kids playing in the lawn and blah 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 blah. And at one point, hipster Johnny Depp slinks over in his Crocs and his tracksuit bottoms and goes, well, I don't believe her, look at me with my floppy hair, and fucks off again. And you're just thinking, God, I can't wait till he dies. And then
I'll believe it.
And then he talks to the kids. They're like, oh yeah, she's in his room. Oh well, she's in her room. Oh well, she's in her room. Yeah,
thank you.
She's up in her room. She's up in her room. Well, she's up in her room. Oh, okay. Well, I'll be over here being all nonchalant about things. So this goes on, and it was during all the fade-throughs from all the things that I pictured a room, right, with two writers in it. I know it was only him or whatever, but like two writers in it walking up and down going, now what? Now what? Fuck. Now what? Like, the montage allowed me to see behind at the desperation of a person who'd gone, oh, wait a minute, I've got a really clever idea. And had written like 40 pages of what he felt was a really clever idea. And then got to a point where he was like, so now what? And what he came up with was, oh yeah, let's have it so that he doesn't see it for a few days, so maybe it was all in her head, right? And then, oh wait a minute, he does see it and it's his mother and she humps him, yeah? Oedipus. And then...
That's exactly what went through his head.
Right.
Because that's what death is, right? It's being fucked by your mum. There were so many times that someone needs to walk into the room where he was having his thoughts and go, but why? Why? Here's the thing, right? What you were talking about over Carpenter. The mark of a good filmmaker, right? You use your characters and your genre, or if it even is a genre, or your theme or whatever. You use these things and the story that you're telling. You use them to explore a question that you yourself are interested in. Like, for Carpenter, it is presumably, I don't know, I guess...
How many babysitters can I get away with killing before people go, well, come on, what's going on here?
Presumably, I think it's the idea of, in Halloween anyway, like pure evil. Like, can a human being be pure evil? And how would that fit in, your standard American town where people are basically trusting one another not to kill each other and rape each other and murder each other? Like, so what happens if in that kind of cosy but still pretty delicate balance that people have in some kind of a small town, in any kind of civilization, what happens if you drop a figure of pure evil in that, and can they be, stopped? And what do you do? How do you react? It's basically about evil, is what Halloween's about. That's why Plessis keeps going on about it. So it's a vague question in his head, but it's something that interests him, right? And he may even not be able to express exactly in words.
That's why he called him the Shape.
Right. So whatever it is, he's using the character of the babysitter and the character of Michael and the character of Loomis to explore these things that even he can't quite get a grip on, And in doing so, he interests the audience, and then they can have their own interpretations because it touches and stimulates different things in their heads. Right. So there's a difference between using what you've got to explore a question that interests you, and using what you've got to express conclusions that you have drawn, right? No, not even conclusions that you have drawn. But you have had one realisation, which is that we all die, right? We all die. That's it. That's his big fucking realisation. And then he thinks... And then just uses a series of incredibly pretentious images and metaphors to say we're all going to die. And that's it. And it's endless. And there's no feeling of, but the point of we're all going to die is what people do in reaction to that. And they don't drive away in their cars, and they don't fuck people. Like, there's so many other things going on, and it could have been a part of that, but it was so full of just like typewriter and 70s cars and the dark urban like when they're driving through the dark urban underbelly of Detroit. I was thinking of the Hugh Laurie the dark underbelly of modern society. Because that's what was going through his head. He's going, oh yeah, that'll be like the dark. And like
literally, I tell you what you could do. You could take Gummo by Harmony Korine, right? Blue Velvet by David Lynch, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, John Carpenter's Halloween, and Denzel Washington's Fallen.
And show those movies to a wanker and then ask him to make a film.
Right.
This is what you'd get.
Yeah.
It was...
Yeah, it was awful.
It was really super.
It was awful. And listen, I want to explain. I want to explain before... No, you're not at all. It's fine. I want to hear more. But when you said at the end of the movie, you were like, oh... It was one long thing about mortality, and all we do with our time on Earth is to keep fucking, right? When you said that, it instantly made the movie worse, not better. So even explaining the movie made it worse for me than the better. But also because I was genuinely sat there throughout the movie, going in and out from sort of being tense and being slightly nervous, whatever, because maybe something's going to happen, to then kind of being frustrated and pissed off because nothing was happening, to genuinely, in about the 40-minute mark, it losing me completely in the last 40 minutes, me feeling the same kind of agony and boredom that you were feeling. We interrupt this podcast to say hello, valued listener. Thank you ever so much for finding and listening to this episode of the After Movie Diner. Well done, you. Give yourself a quick, swift, round pat on the back. We do hope you're enjoying the show, but even if you're not, or if you are, if you've got a question, or if you've got a suggestion, why don't you drop us a line over at aftermoviediner@gmail.com. That's aftermoviediner@gmail.com. Maybe you don't want to write a long, cumbersome email. Maybe you have problems with your spelling. Maybe you don't have an email address because you're old and infirmed and still living in the 1970s in a pair of plaid pants in an orange room. Well, if that's the case, then why not give us a call over at 347-669-0053 and leave us a voicemail in your very own dulcet tones. That's 347-669-0053. Of course, maybe you don't want to spend the money on a whole long phone call. Well, we do have a free voicemail service at speakpipe.com. That's www.speakpipe.com/aftermoviediner, and use your computer, laptop, tablet, or whatever to leave us a 90-second voicemail over at Speak. That's what I'm doing with my mouth. Pipe, that's what plumbers do when they plumb. .com/After Movie Diner, and let us know what you think of the show. Now, while SpeakPipe might be completely and utterly free for you to use, what isn't completely and utterly free is producing one of these shows each week. There's obviously the movie to pay for, the diner to pay for, the website to pay for, there's the editing man hours, and so on and so on. The list goes on. And I know that you're all listening to this thinking, how can I contribute, sponsor, or become a patron of the After Movie Diner? Well, it's quite simple. You go to www.patreon.com, that's patreon.com/After Movie Diner. You're hopefully noticing a pattern by now, and donate to the show up to $1 per show, or 70p if you're living in the UK, and that would go a great way to helping us produce this fantastic show each week. So that's www.patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Failing all those things, you don't want to do any of those things, why not rate and review us on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find the show. It really, really would help. Thank you very much for listening to this short, but definitely not pointless message, and now back to the regular program. But I was genuinely sat there thinking, like, there are some good things I want to say about this, and there's this, and I want to explain this, and I want to explain that. But actually, just having this conversation, and it's much like The Gunman last week. Similar to that, the more we've delved into the movie and the more we've discussed it, the more I actively hate it. Just like the more that we peeled away the Sean Penn.
To be honest, like the more we've talked about it, the more I don't hate it so much as I don't hate it. The thing is, right, if this guy is over 30, then yeah, I hate this film. Because when you're any kind of a writer, right, or artist,
Thank you.
what's supposed to happen is when you hit your late 20s, early 30s, something is supposed to happen in your thought process. And you have a reaction, you have an instinct, right? I could do this. And then there's an inner voice that you develop that says, is that pretentious shit? Is that just pretentious shit? And then you're supposed to go, oh yeah, it is. But why is that interesting me? And then you think about it some more, and maybe you come out of it with something better. But if you don't have that voice, if it's just, oh, I had an idea and it's really clever, yeah, I don't think about it any more than that. That's okay. Like, you're young and you're still learning and you're sticking in things that are influencing because you like them, and that's okay if you like soul typewriters.
Yeah,
I mean, like when I was 19, I thought, because of the Kinks and Blur and everything, I thought everything from England in the 1960s was like the coolest thing fucking ever, Despite the fact, I imagine actually living in England in the 60s would have been like,
but also,
a cosmic nightmare.
I want to
of Gaussian proportions. It was just naive and empty. Bullshit.
Listen, it could be influenced by all it was influenced by, and it could be filled by all it was filled by. And you could have done something with the concept of a killer that could be anybody at any point, anywhere, and done something interesting about, well, who do you trust, and
that was never
your family.
That was like thrown out there really early on.
Right.
It could be somebody you know to trick you, and that was never ever used.
So what I'm saying is, while we've gone on about like what it was clearly influenced by and whatever, the reason why I've spoken about those things is while I was watching it, that's what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
And it was inescapable that that's what was going on in my head, which is why I've talked about it. Those things don't make it a bad film. What make it a bad film is that it labours. That it labours the metaphor above all things, even when it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's true.
And not only that, but it makes the movie about the metaphor without allowing the audience to find those messages in it if they wanted to.
Yes, you're right. Because I think that
right down to things like the broken swimming pool, which was never explained, but is clearly part of whatever he's trying to say.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right. It should be like, if you're a good filmmaker, you're supposed to tell the story.
And then if people choose to find stuff,
and then you try and draw them in, through the characters, and there's a certain element of hypnosis with the movie.
Look at Brazil.
Lulling audience.
Look at what Gilliam does with Brazil, right? Brazil is chock full of every possible idea that Gilliam has at the time. Like, absolutely every fucking idea under the sun, right? And you can read umpteen things into Brazil, from the very kind of passing resemblance to 1984, right down to questions of mortality and health and satire about plastic surgery or whatever it is. There's all sorts of stuff going on in that movie, right, that is commenting on both then and now and the future and everything else. But the movie is a sci-fi thriller about this guy trying to get to like his one true love and find out what's going on there and blah 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 on the backdrop of this dystopian future, right? The fact that there's all this other stuff and Gilliam's going, look at this and look at that, and could it be this and could it be that, and here's a little thing, and maybe we make the music, the song Brazil, this like cheesy rumba song, maybe we make that some weird theme throughout the thing so that when he presses the elevator buttons it plays it out, and let's tie all this stuff in together because he has a cartoonist mind and he has an animator's mind, and this is what he wants to do, but and he's throwing it all out there. But ultimately the movie can be watched on the principle of it just being a weird dystopian future thriller in which this guy's got to get to this girl, and is the girl the terrorist or is she just a truck driver and blah 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 blah. This had none of that other stuff. We didn't know any relationship stuff except, they had their first kiss, which just means, okay, at one point this guy wants to fuck her, and he probably will. But there was no... And really, that was the bit where they were on the sofa, and maybe the reason why that scene that followed it was quite effective was that it was the only scene where they showed any humanity. The rest there was literally 5-minute long scenes in this movie with people lying about in 70s clothing in a haze, doing nothing.
That's true.
Literally nothing. They set up the swimming pool gag at the end, which is where they're going to lure the monster into the swimming pool and then push a variety of hipster artifacts from the 1950s into the swimming pool in order to electrocute it. Right?
Yeah.
And even once they'd set it all up, and even once we get the idea of what you're doing, right, there was then interminable scenes of the camera hovering about the place, filming people as they sat there stroking the
There was a
water.
lot of lying down, wasn't there? I forgot. Yeah, you're right. I forgot there was an awful lot of lounging.
There's a sequence in Wet Hot. There's a sequence in Wet Hot.
They should have called it the lounge.
The Lounger. There's a sequence in Wet Hot American Summer where all the kids from the summer camp, because it's made in the 90s, but it was like filmed as if it was a summer camp movie from the 80s, a la Meatballs, right? I don't think you've seen it, but it's very funny, David Wayne movie. But in it, where because it's like a spoof type thing, they go into town and they all take a bunch of drugs. And then there's a sequence where they're like lying in this really like shitty house as if they were all heroin addicts, and the camera like floats through while like Janine Garofalo's like lying on the floor or whatever. There were periods in this movie that were like a prolonged slow-mo version of that scene.
It was. If he's over 30, then I hate it. If he's under 30, then...
Well, we'll look him up once we stop recording.
Once
we've stopped recording, I'll look him up.
I pity him because he's going to look back on this. I hope he reads the negative reviews because he needs to read them. He needs to get a good kick in over this film. If he reads the positive ones where he's told, "Oh, what a splendid command of camera," and
it was achingly retro. Oh no, this is it. Achingly retro. Yeah? Question mark. That's
the whole thing was
it follows.
It was called It Follows. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what it was. It was called It Follows, comma yeah? Question mark. That's what this movie was called.
I have to say...
What was the other movie that I watched that was meant to be a horror movie that was like this, that made me want to kill things after I was done? There was another art house horror movie I watched that was awful. Fuck, I wish I could remember what it was.
Because there's loads of good... there's a lot of modern horror movies that I really like.
Right.
IFC, weirdly enough, do a good line in... they obviously go to the festivals and they pick up good... Even though, most of the time they're 3-star horror movies, they're actually pretty good and they're scary and they're, and they do... I mean, Teresa have seen a lot and we like anything, really. We even like found footage stuff if it's good enough and Exorcist stuff. We're not fussy.
Right. But you're right. If I had been sent a screener of this, I would have turned it off after 15
Yeah, you just go, well, there's nothing here. Your point about how the metaphor exists above all that is true, because when you're talking about Gilliam and Brazil, above all, Gilliam cares about Sam. That's what he cares about. All the rest of it is excites him and it's fun, but he cares about his lead character.
Right.
The one thing you say about all Gilliam's films is he cares deeply about his lead character.
Well, he makes himself a lead character.
Right. But this guy doesn't care about anything except how clever he's been. He's so pleased with how clever he's been.
What movie was it? Damn, I've seen a movie like this.
Give me a I might have seen it.
Where the whole thing was just predicated on the director saying how clever he was. I really can't remember now, but it even looked like this movie. This sort of washed out beige and brown filmmaking where everyone just sits around in deck chairs and you just want to punch them in the face.
It's difficult to be scared by something that doesn't make sense. It's okay for the creature not to make sense, but it has to have some kind of...
No, but if you don't care about the lead...
If you don't care about the people, and it's sometimes it follows you and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you can go 3 days without seeing it, And it's not like all the unpredictability, but then there's nothing about it makes any sense.
And why was sometimes it was dead people, and other times it was just normal, and sometimes it had a scary face and was urinating, and sometimes it wasn't.
Because that's the problem. It's whatever happened to please him at the time.
And not only that, but there was one sequence towards the very end where the beast showed up, and it was a naked old man with enormous pubes stood on top of a roof. And instead of being worried by that, I just found it endlessly amusing. And all I could think of was, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen, because it looked like Ron Burgundy from Anchorman was stood naked on her roof.
Yeah.
And I just
for no reason, because it's not
for no reason. No.
It follows you. I mean, when I say follows, I mean sometimes it'll stand on your roof naked for quite a long time. It's been up there for an hour and a half, maybe. But 2.5 hours later, you might be for it, possibly not.
I imagine you could go in and watch this movie as a straight up, cat and mouse, it's coming to get you thing, if you were really unaware of almost any other literature, music, movies.
I'm trying to think, maybe if you spoke a foreign language, but I think you don't even need to speak English, because none of the lines meant anything.
No. They literally...
The metaphor was so obvious.
They literally sat around and went, swimming, yeah? Yeah, swimming. Swimming? Swimming. Wait a minute. Swimming. I'm gonna get in a ring and swim. I think swimming.
I think
that might as well have been the dialogue.
The swimming thing I think was birth. I think.
Well, we can't. I mean, that's a huge hypothesis. But yeah, right.
But you know what? He wouldn't even know. If you asked him, he'd go, birth, vaginas, I don't know.
Because at the end, okay, this really bothered the hell out of me as well. In the swimming pool, right, at the end, it tries to make a grab for her ankle, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That was another thing. He kept throwing stuff at her, right? Oh, that was her dad, by the way, which was indicated by the photograph.
Yeah.
So her dad comes back, starts throwing, and there was some indication that he was like an absentee father because he was never around and the mother was an alcoholic now, and there was some line earlier on in the movie where she was like, oh, he's not around anymore, and then later on when she sees him, she's like, I don't want to tell you who it is, right? But the thing about that is, you hadn't established any of the characters, so none of it meant anything.
Yeah, that's true. It was
and you didn't even indicate it was her dad until after the fact. So then I had to go back and put myself back in that situation and try and care. But by that point, I just wanted to stab you in the eyes. Anyway,
sorry.
No. So the dad gets in the swimming pool. He's grabbed her ankle.
Right.
Blah 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 blah. They're trying to shoot at him. Implausibly, he shoots him through the head even though he can't see him. She gets away. He sinks to the bottom of the swimming pool. She's sat by the side of the swimming pool. They look at her leg. Her leg is swollen up like it's some weird... like he's done something weird to her leg because there's raised whelps on it even though all he was doing was grabbing her. He says, is he still in the pool? She agonizingly slowly creeps towards the pool as if there was going to be some shock, there's going to be some scary face in the pool, or she's really going to see herself in the pool, or some whatever it is. And then the pool fills with blood.
Maybe he had
the screen. Sorry. The pool fills with blood like the elevator pisses blood in The Shining. That's what it was. And it zoomed in on it, and there was a rumbling noise on the soundtrack, a la The Shining, right?
Pretty sure. Did it then cut to people lying around?
No. Well, then it cut to her and Nerdy Guy lying around because her and Nerdy Guy decided to have sex, even though I don't know why that was relevant. Because she'd already had sex with another guy, and that had ended in his death, and she felt really bad about that. So why would she want to do that to the nerdy guy who had actually always been her friend?
Because in terms of the metaphor, it makes sense, but not in terms of the story.
Right.
The whole purpose of the metaphor, I knew she was going to end up with the nerdy guy after 10 minutes. The purpose being she's supposed to
the right guy.
Right, she fucks the guys on the speedboat, she fucks the bad guy who's just using her, and then fucks up. Like, he doesn't really die, he just, like, disappears.
Right, so she ends up with a nice guy.
So she ends up with a nice guy, and then they stroll down the street being followed by the thing, because we're all followed by death, yeah? It's a matter of finding the right person to, it's all horseshit. But it wouldn't surprise me if, actually, he made himself, like, wanky dice, and he had, like, a big dice, and then he'd write, like, 8 wanky things on the dice, and every time he had to make a decision, he'd roll the wanky dice. He'd go, blood in the pool, or face of her dad. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like, what's going to happen now? She sees her dad? Yeah, that'll be good, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to make any sense. It just has to be pretentious and wanky. The whole thing was...
Yeah, it was. Every time I go, why did this happen? I go, oh yeah, to service the metaphor.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's fine if you're going to be, like, pure, like just Dali or Buñuel or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's only about imagery. That's fine. Right?
But you could tell exactly the same story, right?
No, I agree.
You could establish her character. You could establish the characters of the people she has around.
Yeah, but then it would be called Halloween, and somebody would already have made it.
I suppose so.
He wants to swan around a film festival
except that in Halloween,
an expensive hat.
In Halloween, she ends up catatonic in hospital. She doesn't end up.
That's because she presumably...
Well, she doesn't end up in hospital, but we find out in part 2 she's in hospital. But she ends up catatonic in her bedroom, realising that Michael's disappeared. Because evil is all around us.
She's terrified of it. If that's what you want to choose to be the ending, I'm sure you could think of other things.
Well, yeah, because you see the town and you hear Michael breathing over the top of it, as if he is now everywhere, but also nowhere.
So that's terrific. That's a terrific ending.
Right.
The ending is
and also you get Donald Pleasance in a trench coat, spouting awesome lines.
There wasn't a single line of this movie that I could even remember. Did you remember a single line?
I'm going to go on record as saying, if you purposely quote poetry in your movie, I want you to die by a pickaxe. I'm just going to put it out.
I don't have a problem with quoting.
No, I do. Because you know what it says? If it's in a movie like this, I've read some poems, yeah? I've read poems.
I'm trying to think of if there's ever been a...
Unless the movie is called The Poem, or it's about a poem.
I'm trying to think if there has been a horror movie where somebody, like, recited a poem and it was effective.
No.
I don't have a problem. I quite like poetry.
I know.
Some poetry, anyway.
Don't get me wrong.
And that's fine.
Hang on a second. I like poetry. Oh, I'll tell you a movie in which poetry is quoted and it's alright. Barbara Hershey reads the E. Cummings poem in Hannah and Her Sisters.
It's not a horror movie, right?
No, but I said any movie.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's effective.
And she says no one, not even the rain, has very small hands.
Yeah, that's true.
But that is in it. But that works. It just works. I can't explain why it works.
No, I understand.
No. It works because Michael Caine has given her something that at that moment touches her and makes her feel very close to him and makes her make a decision to call him, which panics him and flummoxes him and allows you to see both sides. It allows to see her romantic, dreamy state and his, whoa, shit, what if my wife finds out state? So it actually leads to something. It's part of the characters. It's da-da-da-da-da. It's not just like, let's have the Velma character read something out of a book.
I agree, but what I'm saying is, I don't think it's necessarily totally wrong to quote poetry in your movie at all. However,
no, I think it's pretty wrong.
No,
I think it's pretty.
No,
Sam Neill's in this. Sam Neill's in the Bible part too.
Of course he is, Sam. And I don't know why, but I've such a huge affection
for Sam Neill.
Ever since Event Horizon, I will watch Sam Neill do or say anything in anything.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's bad to do poetry, but I do think it's a bad idea to go, well, the Wasteland's good, I'll get a teacher to say the Wasteland, and that's all fine, but the way the teacher said the Wasteland is the worst reading of that that poem that I've ever heard, and it's almost impossible not to say that poem and for it to be effective. It's a beautiful poem. But it didn't have anything to do.
But the point of the scene was not, the effectiveness of the poem. The point of the scene was, I've read a poem, this poem is vaguely relevant to life, because all poetry is vaguely relevant to life.
But the point about the Wasteland, it's supposed to be how, even though we've got all these things and life is different and we're not struggling with disease and war. I mean, it was the 30s, but like we're not struggling with disease and war and all these things that you find in older poems and old, epic, whether they be Greek or whatever. That everything is about like death is just around the corner and love is like, love is an unstoppable, force in like Shakespeare or whatever. Is how do we deal with the fact that with all these things around us, we are going to die? And how do we make our life important when so much of our life is filled with mundanity, like with teaspoons and, going a bit bald and all the rest of it? Like, how do we deal with this huge, enormous truth that we are going to die when the world is full of, oh God, I'm late for a meeting? How do you square those two things? So the wasteland's okay to use it if that's what you want to say. But he wasn't saying that. He was saying we're all going to die. And that's it. It's not enough.
So you might as well sleep with a geeky guy while you can.
It's not enough. Because if these teenagers were surrounded by, let's say for the sake of argument, you're going to make this movie, and these teenagers are surrounded by Twitter and Facebook and iPhones and all the latest technology, and this thing was still happening to them, and it was some throwback 70s thing, that might have been a bit interesting. Like, even though you're surrounded by constant social media and all the rest of it, still you're going to die, and it's all about fucking, and it always will be. Maybe that would have been interesting. But to surround them with like things that aren't real, old televisions, old clothes, old cars, well, that's not their life. That's not what these teenagers. Teenagers don't sit around playing old maid and lying around doing nothing. Like, they don't do it. So, what's the point? What are you saying?
Do you know what made me laugh?
Sorry.
At one point, they went into the bedroom, her bedroom, and she had a Wildcats poster on the wall.
Yeah.
Some rock band or something. Possibly it's local to Detroit. Maybe I should know, but I don't know. But it was some sort of like local garage band type thing, Wildcat. And all I could think was that bit in Royal Tenenbaums with Owen Wilson's character going, Wildcat. Wildcat.
Yeah. It did.
I'm going to go. And then he takes the thing and gets up. And then it cuts to Gene Hammond. He goes, you can't act like that on television. I love that bit. That's my favourite bit. And he goes, Wildcat.
Yeah. That's the kind of movie it made you think of better things. It made you think of better movies. I wish I was doing anything except watching this movie.
Yeah.
So, okay, if I had to summarise, first of all, don't go and see it. There's like the sequence with the first time he broke with, oh, you're being attacked by your own, by like a vision of your own old age, your own mortality, was the tall guy with no eyes. And the reason the tall guy with no eyes was because it looked cool, because he was coming. It was a neat trick. They had the shorter girl in the doorway, and behind her was the black corridor, and he came out of like a fairly limited black space around and above her head. So for him to like appear there and be like tall and have no eyes was like, that was an effective scare.
Right.
But that was there because it was an effective scare. He actually broke with his own lame metaphor to create that effective scare, and everything else after that, everything else that creature became was just like he didn't even keep up with his own metaphor. Like,
even at one point it became like the Japanese horror movie where it was like, oh, it's a scary kid.
Oh yeah, it's a girl in a nightgown. Yeah. It was all like...
Also, throughout the whole movie, whenever the beast showed up, it was either naked or dressed in white. Yet, in the movie theatre where we didn't see it, the kid was like, did you see that girl in the yellow dress? But at no point did the creature wear anything other than white night clothes.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It was the Ring, wasn't it? It was the Ring. That's what that was from.
Yeah. But when the kid crawled through the hole...
Or The Shining, with the women in the bath. Shining women in the bath.
That was the urinating woman to begin with.
No, but I'm saying... But you're right about the urinating.
And every single woman who was the ghost had one boob out. The woman in the kitchen, or both if they were naked, but the woman in the kitchen was urinating, and the mother, when she showed up with a nightgown, had her boob out.
Yeah, I think that was...
Breasts, yeah.
There's something about motherhood there. I mean, he's got some issues, the director, but there's something about motherhood there because it was breastfeeding, and I'm sure that all the swimming pools and water are meant to be vagina,
and hence
or water breaking,
and then the red coming into it,
and the red. Right. And there was that weird sequence where she was looking. Remember that sequence in the mirror when she opened up, like she pulled open her underwear and looked down and, like, in horror at her own vagina.
Well, I thought that was because she thought maybe she had a disease from the sex.
No, I think it's all. It's something about fear of. If I was a psychologist watching the movie, I'd say the director.
It would have been much better.
Wasn't breastfed, or was breastfed until he was like 8.
It would have been a much better movie had the movie been about the fear of sexually transmitted diseases, but not obviously about that. But that was the underlying thing about it, rather than the thing being.
I think you're overestimating that as a thing. I think if you watch the film and go, she's a bit frightened to get the clap, I'm not sure I need a movie based around that.
I mean, if
you're going to go the clap exclamation mark.
No. Meaning, if you took, there's a way to take the tropes of 70s and 80s horror of if you have sex you die, or all the rules that Scream has. And instead of, like, Scream's thing was that it pointed them all out, right? Never run upstairs, blah, 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 blah. The next step, the thing that no one's actually done is, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, maybe it's not possible, but would be to take those things and then and subvert them in some way, especially the having sex thing. And I thought that's what they were trying to do here initially. Like the fear of... then that just comes back to the thing, but I was going to be like the fear of, like, microbes and stuff in your body changing and illnesses and disease and blah, blah, but that's just the thing. I mean, everything you come back to has already been done, I guess.
I think the problem is that...
You know what I'm saying?
No, I do.
Take it rather than, you're going to be killed by the boogeyman because the boogeyman disapproves of teenagers having sex.
Right, but what you're saying... No, I agree with you, but the problem that you're having there is that you're taking away the interesting... Like, a lot of the old monsters, like Wolfman or Frankenstein or Dracula, are like representative of ideas, right? And if you take away the ideas, or rather, if you take away the metaphor and you just have the idea, then you're just left with, like, life, and you might as well look out of the window. You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem. I see what you're saying.
Right. Oh, did you hear Ryan Gosling has directed his first movie?
Oh, I really like the joke in...
I want to know how many windows he looks out at.
I would say that it's not that I hate it, it's just it was really shallow and boring and irredeemably pretentious and really pleased with itself when it had absolutely no right to it. And I don't hate the guy for doing it, because I think everybody ever who's tried to do something artistic has at some point gone through the stage that this film represents, which is a total lack of self-awareness, like being completely unaware of how pretentious and shallow you're really being. And that's okay. I think everybody has to go through that. It's just a shame that this guy, at worst, may be arrested in this state forever if he believes good reviews. If he reads his bad reviews, he may have a hope, because he does have an eye and he can direct. But if he doesn't change how he thinks about representing his ideas, then he's always going to be a shockingly bad director.
Yeah. And there wasn't enough Brian Dennehy. In fact, there wasn't any Dennehy, and then because there was a distinct lack of Dennehy...
How is it when Brian Dennehy, I'm assuming, is available,
yeah,
you can't put him in your movie?
Imagine if at some point the thing that was following her became Dennehy.
God, that would be brilliant. What if it wasn't? What if it was called Dennehy Follows? And the representation of death was Brian Dennehy
in a brown suit.
Look, no matter where we go, Brian Dennehy just, like, stood outside. Like, if it had been like a sketch or whatever, and the sketch was, just sitting there talking to the diner, and you look outside, there's Dennehy looking at the window. Okay, where do we go? It's our mortality. As represented by Brian Dennehy. He follows us everywhere.
We just made It Follows better. What's that, Dennehy?
At some point in the future,
could you... Wait a minute. Can you see Brian Dennehy over there? Yeah, I can see Brian Dennehy over there.
At some point in the future, they're going to be able to manipulate images, like, seamlessly.
Right.
And you would be able to make a cut of It Follows, where instead of, like, chicks in dresses or nude old men or whatever, you'd be able to, like, essentially, like, film shop, I guess, Photoshop in Brian Dennehy into every single scene. That is a film I might watch.
I want to live in that world. Why is that the movie we didn't just see?
That would be amazing. Brian Dennehy stood on the roof, looking around. You know what I mean?
That'd be amazing.
That'd be really good. All right, we just made the film better.
We just did.
Well, thanks very much for asking me.
Brian Dennehy Follows. Well, no, it was your idea, dude. It was you picked this one. So,
Yeah, sorry, I won't pick. I won't
you picked
pick
the
the
last
next
two,
one.
in fact.
Yes, I did. They were both shit.
both
I won't
shit.
pick the next one.
No, because I think we had a good discussion about this one, and we would have had a better discussion about
The gunmen. They weren't so effing rude.
if
in
they
that
weren't
diner.
like trying to get us out of the diner. Here, they haven't even come over and offered us the check. We're just sat here drinking water.
That's true. Should we get the check? Mm-hmm. Let's get the check. They're really nice, and I tell you what, that was a really good sandwich.
It was okay.
What I really liked.
I'm glad you liked yours. Mine was a little okay. It's fine. But thanks ever so much, James, for joining us in the after movie.
Thank you very much
this
for having
week.
me.
It was a real pleasure, and we'll be back next week, and we'll be discussing Brian Dennehy
In Briin Dennehy Follows.
Yeah.
Ooh. Brian Dennehy Follows.
It's Brian Dennehy is the symbol of our mortality.
If we get REM to do the sound of that. Brian Dennehy Follows.
Everybody's Brian Dennehy. That's me in the corner. That's
you're
me
Dennehy.
with Brian Dennehy. Playing Old Maid with Brian Dennehy. What were we doing last night? I was playing Old Maid. Oh yeah, Brian Dennehy.
That sounds like a euphemism.
Oh, playing Old Maid with
You're right.
Brian.
I was playing Old Maid with Brian Dennehy.
Oh yeah, we've all been there. So
We've all been there, mate. We've all been there.
did you get the ointment? I got the ointment. So,
Can we get a check? Yes. All right. No? Cheerio.
okay, and just like last week, to play us out, it is another track from The Pleasancing, which is a 10-track album that I did recently all about Donald Pleasance and is available over at MISC, that's M-I-S-C, plumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com. There's also a link to it on the blog post when I put this episode up, so you can just go there. But because of the Halloweeny nature of It Follows, we're going to play us out this week with Dr. Sam Loomis's Lament from The Pleasancing.
Well, I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, and no conscience, and no understanding. And even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil. Oh, and even right or wrong. Well, I met this 6-year-old child with his black, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes. Well, this child, he had the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was pure and simply evil. And whenever there is trouble, I will strap on my beige trench coat and I try to warn the people that he's coming home. Oh yeah, he's a Dracula to my Van Helsing, and I'll never stop hunting him down. Michael Myers, look behind you. The presence of Donald Pleasance means that you're never gonna be alone. No, 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 you're never gonna be alone. Michael Myers, I will always be right behind you. He was my patient for 15 years. He became an obsession with me. And until I realized there was nothing inside him, neither conscience nor reason that was even remotely human. An hour ago I stood up and fired 6 shots into him, and he just got up and walked away. Well, I'm talking about a real possibility that he's still out there. Oh, 6 bodies, Sheriff, that's what I've seen between here and Richmond. You better believe it, I tell you, a filling station in flames. I'm telling you, Michael Myers is here in this town. He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way. Michael, why now? You've waited 10 years and knew this day would come. Don't go into Haddonfield. If you want another victim, please take me.